I was born in France, grew up in the southwestern parts in a very rural area.
I've been in France I've had my house 30 years. France has always been my home base. My kids were born here, they were raised here. We're very, very much connected.
We're going to be talking to all of our affiliates and colleagues and partners, and what really makes this special, how do we bring you value?
None of the people who've become partners are by accident. What you've done is you're building a community of people based on trust.
I do believe that this is one of the things that actually draws all of the partners together, because I genuinely really care about delivering the service.
Yeah. We hear that from clients all the time. The same problems and solutions come up time and time again. Why they approached you, what they got out of that conversation, how it's helped, and how much at ease they are now, how they feel that they can move to France with confidence. And that's really what we're about, isn't it?
Hi guys, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Richard Hammond, founder and CEO of French Connections HCB. And in this podcast, we're going to be chatting everything about all of the people that work with me and how we've come along with this journey. So we're going to kick this off by talking with Lizzie, that you often seen on our channel. So Lizzie first actually got in touch with me, as quite a few people you'll hear on this podcast, by actually being a client herself. So she came to me for some business advice back in over 5 years ago, I think now. And I was amazed with Lizzie's skill and CV and what she was doing, just generally speaking, and her passion for writing. And you'll have actually first been introduced to Lizzie with our newsletters, which I often get so much fantastic feedback over. But recently, as you know, we've really launched into people's journeys to France and all of the videography that goes with it. And to be able to tell people's stories, I thought that no better person would be able to go and do that but Lizzie herself. And yeah, so let's just have a chat with Lizzie. So Lizzie, do you want to introduce yourself and tell our viewers a bit more about you for once?
I certainly will. Thanks, Rich. But I'll also tell them a little bit more about you. So what I should say was I contacted French Connections HCB because I wanted to set up a business in France. And in fact, I think I must have found you just by Googling, like so many people do. But what I was so impressed about was you instantly got my situation. You told me exactly what to do. And then, of course, I got the surprise call quite soon afterwards, I think, asking if I wanted to work with you. And it's been great. I've loved it, I must say. So as you said, we started off with the e-news, which is still ongoing. And for anybody who's actually read the e-news, often it might be the latest news, something that's happened, something that we need to tell people about, a latest update on French administration, or it could be just a case study, a story about some of our clients. But more recently, we've embarked on our series of videos called Real French Connections. And that's such a joy to write, to meet these people. Hasn't it been good fun?
Yeah, I think it's just wonderful. But before we move on to Real French Connections, Lizzie, come on, I want you to not be humble here and tell me why I was so amazed by what you did in the past and all the companies that you worked for, and still kind of do an awful lot of work with the meaningful side of writing. I know that it's so important to you. I'm always very careful when I write something to you because I know that you really read and very particular about wording. And do you want to tell us more about that?
Yes, I think Rich is being very polite here. Yeah. I am very particular about wording. I think it's very important, whatever you write, whether that's an ad campaign for a bank or whether you're writing a sustainability report for a client, no matter what the client, I think that the human story is the thing that people react to and respond to. I think it's really, really important that we're not just talking facts and figures, that we actually always have, as a company, we have a personality, and that personality comes through in everything we say and do. That's how people feel they know us, and that's how we can get to know people. So if you're talking about skill, it's really more a passion for telling the story behind the story. Sure. And bringing it to life.
And your personal story as well, because you've lived in many places, worked for so many cool, amazing companies. I remember saying to you, look, I can't afford to employ you full time, but can you just come and do something with me? But yeah, I mean, your story of France, and let's share that with people a bit more. I know it's personal, but come on. Let's give us a bit more.
France, well, I'm English.
Sydney.
I'm English initially, but I always, as soon as I'd finished university, I was off. And off meant going to Australia. And after having been in Australia for 6 years, which was suddenly more than half of 10 years, it felt like time to come back to Europe, but not to London, to France. And so I've actually been living in France for probably 30-something years. My kids were born there. They all went to the village school, tiny village school. But interspersed between then and now was another session of time in London, and then more time back in Australia, this time in Sydney. So I have worked for some amazing companies on some amazing brands and projects and social projects.
Give us a few names, go on.
I don't know if I can, because you always sign an NDA.
Okay.
So I've worked, in terms of big companies,
yeah.
Advertising companies, I've worked for M&C Saatchi, London and Sydney. M&C Saatchi is a huge company with global clients and local clients. So that's always been a great mix. And along the way, there have been some tiny little up-and-coming little startup agencies, and several other big names. But what I like is taking each day and each project as a fresh start.
Wow.
So what I love about my job is no 2 days are the same. And that's very true working with you, Rich.
Thank you.
No two client stories are the same. Nothing that you yourself are a person with many, many, many ideas. So the day can bring something new. The week can bring something new every single week.
Absolutely. And what about the parts of France? Because you've got a true love affair with the region that you live in. Of course, other parts, but whereabouts is it that you live?
So I live in the Luberon, which is sort of just down from Avignon, between Avignon and Aix-en-Provence. It's a tiny little village called Seignan. It's a 12th century village, just a church, a boulangerie, a post office, and 10 minutes down in the hill.
You do a bit of Airbnb in as well?
I do have a little cabanon,
Yeah.
hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
But everything's old and unspoilt there. Our local produce is lavender, cherries, sunflowers every now and then, but they're not regular. They usually fill in a patch when somebody is letting their field life fallow. Olives. It's all the pretty things, really. There are lots of poppies. There are always colours all year round, and I absolutely love it. And you're right, I do love other areas, and I have particularly loved, in doing our video series, going to where our clients have chosen and discovering their part of France. Bordeaux is a really good example.
Yeah.
Quite recently, I interviewed a lovely couple in Bordeaux. I hadn't been there. And it was a chance to sort of get to know it and see why other people make the choices they make. And really, I think it would be a hard push to find anywhere in France that wasn't a great place to live. But we all end up having our favourites. What about you, your Toulouse area?
Yeah, although Toulouse is not necessarily my place of choice, I would, but actually, to be fair, my favourite part of France is not necessarily where I lived or grew up. I'm more of an Atlantic coast kind of guy.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess the thing in general with France is that, especially from people watching this from the US, and we know a lot of our clients are from the US, often just don't know where they want to be. They've got this idea that they want to be in France because it ticks so many boxes in terms of convenience, security, connectivity to Europe, etc. But the actual locations are difficult. So I think this is what we want to bring during our Real French Connection videos, to make you discover other parts of France. And you do such a great job. It's not because you're just sat here today that I'm saying that, but it's just such a pleasure to watch you go through this. And I think my thing with you know, the work that we've done, which we were talking about it, nearly 5 years working together.
Yeah.
And bizarrely, guys, for those watching today, this is actually the first time Lizzie and I are in the same room. So that's how international.
Richard's so much taller than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah. And better
or
looking,
I'm so much shorter, I'm not sure.
But the thing is that that's so true. I think that's what worked and clicked so well, is that both of us work for these huge corporates, and we've always been working internationally and, you know, online, and it wasn't something that was strange or weird to not actually see each other in a way. And it feels like, you know, of course we know each other because we're chatting every day, several times a day. But that comes from my corporate background and your corporate background working so well together. I think that's, you know, that was, we already had that in common.
Yes.
And yeah, it's been, you know, we've had loads of highs and lows in the company, and still probably more to come. But it's such a cool journey together. So again, thank you for that, Lizzie. Well, we actually have come into a part with Lizzie that we can discuss, which is why French Connections HCB came in the first place. And as most of you watching this video will know, I was born in France, grew up in the southwestern parts in a very rural area. And I saw, you know, through my upbringing there, this real need for people helping English speakers. And at the age of 18, whilst I was studying and doing my work experience in Auch, the capital of the Gers, I really just saw that even more. And my excuse, and I've often said this on video, is probably lack of ambition, but equally the fact that at that stage, I think I just wasn't ready to necessarily launch business. But what we're doing today, the ability to do video, content, Google, Facebook just didn't exist. So in my mind, the only way that I was ever going to be able to connect with you guys was by traditional marketing, something that actually Lizzie here it comes from. And we've adapted over the years to be able to do these kind of face-to-face videos and all of the journeys that we're embarking on with Real French Connections. But equally, my passion to provide a service has driven us to kind of work with Lizzie around all of the aspects of improving the services that we do and how we communicate those to you. And it's been so hard over the last 6 years to kind of say, well, here are the problems, here are the limits to what we can cover for a price, or, you know, for a delimitation of actually what that service looks like. Because I guess we're today a service between services, i.e. we recognize problems sometimes with companies or with essentially firms in France which don't necessarily understand what the English speaker or what the emotional side of moving to such a country is going to provoke, and we kind of come around and help that. And then Lizzie helps me tell the story, which is either by newsletter, now by video, and of course also by, you know, writing what's on our website. I think that's, you know, a big part of what's been done continuously. But equally, I'm creating and adding services all the time. So during the following podcast, we'll be introducing all of the people that actually now have come to join this big French Connections HCB family, because it genuinely is a family. And I wouldn't have got to where I am today with so many services without, you know, people like yourself, Lizzie, believing in me, in my crazy ideas sometimes. But I think, and thanks to you guys watching these videos, of course, Lizzie brings this to life now today. Like, I'm so pleased to be able to, you know, get Lizzie to go out there and film. So I'm terrible. I talk far too much anyway. And I wouldn't be a good interviewer, I think. I feel you get such a good vision of people's lives, you know, whether that be written. And the way that I suppose talked Lizzie into this was, I want to do what you do in written on video, because and I wanted to mix that up so that we wanted to be able to have the e-newsletters that would then match the videos, and, you know, kind of mixing old with new. And I think that's really how we came to do the Real French Connections series, which is super successful, and thank you all for watching. But also continuously developing these services. So over the course of these interviews, we're going to be talking to all of our affiliates and colleagues and partners, and what really makes this special. Like how do we bring you value? How do I bring you value as one person, essentially having an idea when I was 18 years old, and people like Lizzie helping this come to life, and how she's also seen this evolve, because I am full of ideas, and I think sometimes I do need people like Lizzie that will sometimes say, actually, Richard, we won't send this e-news out. We won't do this particular thing, or how do we bring Richard out? And the feedback that I get from you guys watching is often what you appreciate is when I do go a bit off piste, and I don't stick to script. And so, of course, all of the services also that you help put to our clients, like that I've had ideas, found partners with, and it's so important. I really want to bring these guys onto the show and introduce them, introduce the relationship that I have with them, because unlike so many companies out there, we don't just fire you over to somebody. In fact, Lizzie kind of interviews each new partner for me and gives me her feedback, and kind of that's not going to work for our audience. You're so protective of the audience. That's why I can't ever get rid of Lizzie, because she's kind of my I guess, sounding board for all of the things that we do and provide as a terms of service. And she's so protective of you guys, really, genuinely. And I think that's, so much there is that that I want to bring huge value and not just kind of make money, so to speak. So, and that's what you see through the videos that we produce. And so I think that's what clients tell me, at least. And so moving on to this, Lizzie, what happened? How do you see all of this change and all of these new partners? How have you felt that?
To relate that to my personal experience, there is, no matter how good your French, no matter how long you've been here, every single person living in France who isn't French, and a lot who are French, will have faced an insurmountable problem with the EDF, or with a telephone contract, or with just things that administratively are done differently in France. And I have so many. I mean, the list is just endless. From a
how long have you spent in France again?
I've been in France 30. I've had my house 30 years. Okay. I have lived away during that time, but France has always been my home base. My kids were born here, they were raised here. We're very, very much connected, and that is home base from which I can then travel. But as recently as a couple of weeks ago, I would have longed for a Juliette to come and help me sort some things out. Here's an example, such a silly example, but these are the things that happen on a daily basis in France. A meter was read wrongly. In the little, you mentioned my gîte. I have a little cabin. I have my house, the family house, and then I have a couple of cherry orchards, and at the other end of the cherry orchard is a little tiny gîte, one room up, one room down, in a lavender field. It's very, very cute. So the EDF read the meter for the house and attributed it to the cabanon, which resulted in a bill for 1,900 euros of unpaid electricity. Now, if you could see the house smaller than this tiny space that we're sitting in, you would know that's not physically possible. I thought I dealt with it 3 years ago. Last month, a couple of weeks ago, the bill came back. Now in the hands of a huissier de justice, which is, by the time you get to that stage, you just think, this is complicated. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, and that's now dealt with. But along the way of living here, all the things that you encounter, that I've encountered, means that I'm particularly aware of the problems that incoming English speakers face, regardless of whether they speak the language. So it makes me very sympathetic. And I know how plain language would have so helped back then, back in the day when setting things up. Because yes, of course you can Google, of course you can find anything online, but you find it in the sort of administrative language, either administrative French or translated into English, which doesn't help, to be honest. And it's still complicated. What I love about what you do, and the reason I was drawn, the reason I wanted to work with you in the first place, was I could see that you had a vision for making this simple for people. And therefore, all those roadblocks to coming to live here in France disappear if you don't have the stress of how on earth you're going to make it work. And that's what you do so brilliantly. And yes, you have wild ideas sometimes. And sometimes some of them are hard to put into place. But when they work, they're brilliant. And we hear that from clients all the time. The video people, the people I interview on video, and the people I interview for the e-news. The same problems and solutions come up time and time again. Why they approached you, what they got out of that conversation, how it's helped, and how much at ease they are now, how they feel that they can move to France with confidence. And that's really what we're about, isn't it? Take away the stress, ease the way, and let people just enjoy the marvel of living in a country that has so many great things to offer.
So guys, talking about partners and things that you need to consider when you're moving to France. We, of course, evolve and adapt as a company all the time based on feedback, mainly feedback, because it's really you guys that help us do that. But equally, just the basics that you have to cover, such as taxes, insurance. Recently, we've also delved into what makes you feel comfortable in France, and that's language. And we'll be talking about that as well. And of course, just introducing you to our team in general, and how we administer that as a business. And also how all of these things evolved with Lizzie and how they continue evolving. So let's chat about that, Lizzie.
I think that it's really significant, for example, French lessons. French lessons, whoever we talk to, whether we're talking for an e-news or whether we're talking for a Real French Connections video, language and people's ability to communicate once they get to France is high on the priority, but it's not something that other people can fix. So us being able to introduce a way of delivering French lessons to people is huge, and directly as a result of what people have asked for. But I think there's one other really key point, is that none of the people who've become partners are by accident. What you've done is you're building a community of people based on trust and based on already knowing them very well in most cases. It's just very reassuring.
Somehow I know lots of people.
Somehow you know lots of people, but a lot of people from your rugby days. I mean, people you go way back with some of the people who've become partners, who've evolved in their own businesses. But there's a level of trust there, which means that what we're offering to clients, we can depend on.
So we talk about the emotional things together an awful lot, because we're so attached in the written. But I do believe that this is one of the things that actually draws all of the partners together, because I genuinely really care about delivering the service and being able to somehow bring that value with all of these guys that work with us. And sometimes we get it wrong, like we do sometimes get the wrong partners, or we trial something that just wasn't quite a fit for us. But in general, it is so much, I believe, and I'm sure somehow you must do, although we've never had that conversation together. But the fact that I grew up and was born and was French for 18 years of my life, and somehow so British, and yet having spent so much time working in the US and knowing the US for a European, I know the US fairly well. all of that makes it quite a unique combo, which makes me hard to replace, guys. But no, but the point being is that's actually funny to me, because when I watch your French Connections, Real French Connections YouTubes, which, by the way, guys, if you want to watch, check Lizzie's out on our YouTube channel. But all of the people have this connection with me, but actually it's all of our partners, all of the staff members that work with me and have kind of gone on with my madness, because somehow they believed in something that I had, deep in my sort of heart or soul to get this delivered and done.
I think what we have spoken about way back all those years ago was creating a community. And I think that community has evolved. It's not just a community of people immediately within the team. It's now a community of partners.
Yep.
And it has always been about a community of clients, of the people who come to us. And as we go forward, that community is growing and growing stronger. And it's just such a great thing to be part of.
It is wonderful, Lizzie. And I think that's just, to finish on that as well, is that this emotional side, which I've always felt that I've always told you I'm probably, an undiagnosed dyslexic, so I can't do the writing. You do the writing for me. I just give you that vision and you just go ahead and you write the stuff. And I've always found that so liberating, right? It's kind of, Lizzie's like my AI, basically. So there we have it, guys. You're going to see now and speak with loads of our partners, and hopefully you'll be able to enjoy this as much as I and Lizzie have enjoyed making this video, I'm sure. Don't forget to go on our YouTube channel and check out all of Lizzie's work, but also subscribe to her newsletter. Hey, the old school stuff that we love.
Still a good read.
And of course, thank you all for watching.